Now let me also speak one chapter of the book, The Battle for Sanskrit. That is about the same topic actually, which now the Belgium professor was speaking about the Buddhism actually. Sheldon Pollock, how in his book, he wrote a book, Sheldon Pollock, he wrote a book named The Language of the Gods in the World of Men. In his book, he interpreted Buddhism as contradicting to Vedic Dharma. This is what actually he wrote and he discussed, Rajiv Malhotra has discussed in his book. Now, on this chapter, I have some points and I am speaking on this chapter. What actually Sheldon Pollock tried to do in his book, that he divides Vedic tradition and Buddhic tradition as mutually opposing traditions. He said that Buddhists challenged the authority of the Vedic tradition by opposing this as animal sacrifices. But we have to remember that Vedic and Buddhist traditions are not contradicting each other. Animal sacrifices, of course, they have opposed, and many of them, not only Buddhists, even Charvakas has opposed animal sacrifice. But it doesn't mean that Buddhism came only to contradict the Vedic religion, not like that. Because Buddha, when Buddha was born, he was very much Vedic, he was born in Vedic tradition. Now tell me in which tradition he was born otherwise. He was very much born in Vedic tradition. We all say that he was Kshatriya. Kshatriya, in which tradition this Kshatriya was there? Only in Vedic tradition. So he was born as Vedic, in Vedic tradition, and therefore it is not contradicting at all. That's my point actually. My argument is Buddhism is not contradicting. Why you are again and again saying that Buddhism is contradicting to Vedic religion, and this is not correct. Buddhism follows, actually if you read Buddhism, you will understand that Buddhism follows the Jnana, Karma, Bhakti theories. You all find these three theories in Buddhist literature. Actually, if you study Buddhism, because I have studied Buddhism, I am postgraduated in Pali, not only in Sanskrit, I did research also. After studying this Pali literature and also Mahayana Buddhism, I always thinking that why actually people are contradicting each other, which is not at all real, and they are not contradicting. Because actually, if you study Buddhist literature, what he did is Buddha emphasized on yoga. Actually, he continued the yogic tradition in his Buddhist literature. He did nothing else that only continuing and researching and working on yogic tradition, yoga actually. How now you say how he is working on yoga? Because yoga means actually, you see what Patanjali says in Yoga Darshana, yoga chitta vritti nirodha. Yoga Darshana says about the mind only. And Buddha always speaks about the mind. Dhammapada starts with the verse mind. Mano pubbangama dhamma, mano pubba manomaya, manasachi paduttena bhasativa karotiva tatunam dukkhamanmeti. And not only that, later in Khuddaka Nikaya also, in Digha Nikaya, everywhere Buddha you will find that he always Ashtanga Marga also. He always focuses on the mind. You control your mind, he says. There are several gadhas and several passages. I am not going to repeat all these things, but that is why I say that what he said, and this yoga, this mind, researching on mind and controlling on mind, and this is what actually Vedic literature, Vedas also are saying same thing. You see, in Rig Veda you find this Manas Sukta, there Tanme Manas Shiva Sankalpa Vastu. So this is what in Vedic mantra. The same thing Buddha also is saying, Mano Pubbangama Dhamma. In this way, if you think that this is not at all contradicting, and in later Mahayana Buddhism, if you see, there is a Yogacara school in Mahayana Buddhism. It is completely based on mind study only. They are called a mind-only theorists. They say only mind is existing, nothing else is existing. That's what their theory. So this is always I am confusing in what way Sanskrit language was misunderstood, Sanskrit literature was misunderstood in India and also everywhere. Why actually only on Sanskrit always attacks on Sanskrit and misunderstanding on Sanskrit literature? Why misunderstanding Buddhism also? Why you are not properly understanding perfectly? You are not understanding. This is the problem, one of the problem in the field of Indology. And this problem is being created by some scholars like Sheldon Pollock. I think that's why he criticized and also he researched on his books, Rajiv Malhotra ji. And we have to do also that. And what Sheldon Pollock says that Buddhism only brought the literature in India. Means there was no writing style in Sanskrit, and due to before Buddhism, actually there were only Vedic mantras. Brahmins used to before Buddha, not just meaning. He said that only meaningless chantings of the Vedic mantras were existing. These poems and creative writing was not there in India, which was introduced by Buddhism, which is not at all correct. And let us think that before Buddha, what was there in India? Do you think that this is just meaningless chantings of the Vedas were there? It's not at all correct. It is not correct that Vedic sages were only fire worshippers. He said that only fire worshippers. They were just used to fire only, that nothing else. Buddhism brought the creativity, and the creative literature, everything has. It is not correct. See the Vedas once. Did you study the Veda? If you see the Veda, you will find many philosophical, cosmological discussions. For example, Asyavamiya Sukta and Nasadiya Sukta and various suktas of Rig Veda. You know what is the matter of the Asyavamiya Sukta and Nasadiya Sukta? They discussed how this creation actually originated. Nasadasi, Sadasi. You see, these profound discussions have taken place in Vedas. Then how you say that, how Sheldon Pollock said that only repeated chantings were there and Buddhism brought this, this is not correct. And we have profound philosophical discussions, not only in Vedas, Brahmanas, Aranyakas, Upanishads are known for these discussions. Upanishads are before the Buddha. And he also said that this writing and everything, civilization and this creative writing, everything came from by the foreign Kushans and Shakas. And because they came from Central Asia and they have introduced all these writing system and skills and all that, which is not correct again. Before that only, as we can find in Vedic literature, we have so much science. In Chandogya Upanishad also we can find that Ekaye Vahu Rasadeva Agra Asit, Ekamevad Vidiyam, Tasma Dasatas Sanjayate. All these things are, it's full of Vedic literature, is full of profound discussions of philosophy. The relation of Buddha with the prior profound knowledge of Vedic sages can be proved in many ways, in various manners. Buddha was highly influenced by Sankhya philosophy, actually. And this Sankhya philosophy is not just coming just itself. Sankhya philosophy is the development of the... Sankhya philosophy was basically found in Upanishads. And later on it became Sankhya philosophy, and that was influenced, that has influenced Buddha. And Buddha was highly, because if you see the Buddha Darshana and Sankhya philosophy, both are very similar. Both are based on same principles. Sankhya also says, you see, these three worlds are, everything is full of sorrow, misery, pain, everything. Dukkhatraya abhigata. Buddha also starts from dukkha only. So in this way we have so much similarity between Sankhya and Buddha. Sankhya was pre-existing before Buddha, and Sankhya is because it just came from Upanishads. And Buddha's teacher was there. He studied Buddha, because Buddha, when he came, he left his palace, and all of a sudden he could not become the great scholar. You see, he studied with various people. He had two teachers, Arada Kalama and Udrak Ramaputra. And Arada Kalama was a great master of Sankhya, and he studied the Sankhya system. That is why Buddha learned from him. And in that way, Buddha was very much part of Vedic tradition. Pollock claims that Ramayana was composed by Valmiki based on the Jataka tales. This is very much unacceptable, because in Jataka, I also studied that in Jataka tales, there is one Jataka, Dasharatha Jataka. There is a small story actually. It's not very detailed, very brief story, but story is very different from Ramayana. There, Sita is the sister of Rama, and all such things are described. And what Pollock says that entire Ramayana, which is Adi Kavya, you see about Ramayana, it is said that Yavas Thasyanti Giraya, Yavat Vindhya Himachalam, Tavat Ramayani Katha Lokeshu Pracharishyati. As long as Himalayas are existing, and as long as Vindhya and this mountain is existing, so long Ramayana Katha continues. This is true also. You see, Ramayana is still continuing, ever interesting story. We have seen several movies and several serials, but still we are interested to know something, watch and see Ramayana story, because that is the greatness of Ramayana. And he is such a great poem, Ramayana, which is Adi Kavya. How that great Indologist of America, he says that this is just based on Dasharatha Jataka, small. It is not at all acceptable. And he says that, in fact, he says that actually Ramayana, the story of Rama is nothing but the just imitation of Buddha's story, because they have imitated Buddha. And in order to defend his arguments, he delayed the dates of Ramayana. Because what he said that Ramayana was composed after Buddha. This is great injustice. But he could not supply the sufficient proofs for that. In Ramayana, if you see the Ramayana, you never mention, you will never see the mention of Bauddha or Jaina or Buddhists or Jains, anything, nothing else.
Right.
Nothing is found in Ramayana. If it is after Buddha,
Right.
there should be some mention of Ramayana, Buddha and Jaina, something, but you never find any mention of Buddhists or Buddha or Jains or Jaina or anything. So that is quite evident that Ramayana was written earlier than, much more before than Buddhism. And he delayed the date of Ramayana, and then he says that, and we cannot accept that because he could not give the proofs, but we can give the proofs. We can give the evidences. Because, you see in Ramayana, Kaushambi, Kanyakubja, Kampilya towns were mentioned, but not the Pataliputra. Because Pataliputra town was developed in BC 380 during the regime of Kalashoka. So it is quite evident that is why the Pataliputra was not mentioned in Ramayana. These ancient towns are mentioned very much, Kaushambi, Kanyakubja, Kampilya. And also in Ramayana, Ayodhya was not named as Saketa. Because Saketa was named, Saketa is given to Ayodhya only by Buddhists. So in Buddhist literature, in Jatakas, you will find this name Saketa, but not in Ramayana. So this is another evidence. And he says that, and also he says that Panini also after Buddha, he says.
Yes, very, very clearly.
And however, this is not just Pollock's theory. There are many other Western scholars before him. German scholar Winter Nietzsche, Keith and others have stated that Ramayana was composed after Buddha and Panini after Buddha. But many Western scholars and Indian scholars have not accepted this view. Among them are the Macdonald, Jacobi, are very important. They did not accept Ramayana because they said Ramayana has composed much more earlier than Buddhism. And Panini, there is one famous scholar, Goldstucker. He said that Panini belongs to 8th century BC. So therefore, Pollock's theory that Panini came afterwards, because he tried to convince it through various arguments, because Panini used the Yavana word, Yavana. Yavana means actually Greeks, it is referred to Greek, because Yavana, the ones Panini uses Yavana means, that means Panini's Ashtajayi was written only after Alexander's invasion. That's what his conclusion. But before Alexander's invasion, Panini already knows about the Yavanas. Alexander's invasion was not needed for the Yavana's knowledge of Panini. Because Panini was born in Attak, in present Afghanistan and Pakistan area. So there, Yavanas used to come at that time. That's why he knows about Yavanas already before Alexander. Therefore, he used Yavana word. So in this way, this literature has been misunderstood, and this is what I find actually. This is a indirect attack on our culture and our language. They want to prove that, you see, Sanskrit is not very ancient, Buddhism is contradicting to Vedic religion, and Pali is, again, there is another problem with the Pali. People immediately, because I studied Pali, I am teaching also in our center Pali, people immediately ask me, Pali is ancient or Sanskrit is ancient? Pali is older. This is the question. Everybody asks. This became habit of the, I immediately say that don't ask this question. Whichever may be ancient, both are ancient languages. First you try to learn any one language first. Before learning, what they say, Pali pehle, Sanskrit pehle, they ask. So, I confuse actually, because abhi tak humko bhi pata nahi hai, kaun sa holder hai. So first you will learn any one language at least. Because both languages are great languages, both languages contain great literature. I tell you really, you must read Pali literature. It is a storehouse of our Indian history. Prakrit literature, storehouse of Indian history, culture, traditions. Without learning, without trying to learn, people always try to. We never ask that any other science disciplines, chemistry is first or physics is first. We never ask like that. But they ask always this Pali is first or Sanskrit. And immediately they put Sanskrit is dead or alive. All these questions are coming only on these subjects because they became habituated, because we are habituated with such researches, Pollock's researches. And there are many other scholars also. So, what I request all friends and also academicians, please try to read, if you have any time, try to learn these languages. Really, I am not just emphasizing because I studied Sanskrit. Any scholar, any academician, once he tries to learn, he enters into this language, he knows something about the literature, he never goes back from this literature, because such a great intellectual genius, everything is there. And also, in Sanskrit literature, everything is there. And also people don't consider Sanskrit is not just language. You see, recently I put one school proposal for our center. People thought that, oh, it's just a language, you want to consider school? Not like that, actually. It's not just language. Sanskrit was the medium of a lot of science and literature. And you see, there is one proverb in Sanskrit, kati kavayaha, kati kritayaha, kati nashtaha, kati labdha. So much literature has been destroyed, disappeared. Still, we have at least 2 lakhs Sanskrit books are existing in Sanskrit. In spite of all this destruction, disappearance, you see, when nations divided, a lot of literature has gone. And when Nalanda library was burned, so much literature was burned. And in spite of that, K.T. Ganapati Shastri recently he wrote a book that still we have at least 5 lakhs manuscripts are available in Sanskrit, he wrote. Now still in Tibet and China, also Tibet, particularly Tibetan monasteries, unexplored monasteries are there, still there may be possibility of Sanskrit because there is another version again. Lot of literature is available in Chinese and Tibetan languages. Originals are Sanskrit, but only originals have lost and only translations are available. You ask any Chinese professor, he will tell. So, such a vast literature it is. And that's why it's not just language. We have so much science in it. We have astrology, we have great grammar. And also we have Ayurveda history, so much literature, Ayurveda literature. And we have physics, we have chemistry, everything was there in, you see, Sanskrit, these sciences were not divided in ancient India, everything was there in one single book. So, that is why we have universities, not just schools. We are asking for school, but there are universities on Sanskrit. You see, at least 15 universities are there on Sanskrit in India now. Why university on language? You can just imagine, why can there be any university on language? For language, one language course is enough. Why there are university? Because Sanskrit is not just language, it contains lot of science, literature, so much. Therefore, we need big institutions for that. Such a vast literature, such a great Sanskrit was misunderstood by Westerns and also by Indians also, because we are not trying to learn it. So I am very happy because Rajiv Malhotra, I don't know so much, because I know, but in spite of that, because of his writings, because of his book, such stimulation he has given to us, and we had to think about these problems. We should try to understand these problems in a proper manner, and we should understand that these are not contradicting. Buddhism and Vedic religion is not contradicting. Sanskrit is a great, you should understand that. These problems are very positively discussed in this book, and thank you for giving this opportunity.